It's fantastic, yeah. I mean, this place is the ancestral seat of madness, you know. And when we started out, you know, as kids, like any young band, we were just kind of learning how to play, really. And we'd just knock on the doors of, I mean, around Camden town there were probably 10, 12 Irish pubs that had function rooms at the back, you know, for weddings and birthdays and parties. And then they'd have a bit of music, and they'd have a bit of Irish music or country music. And it suddenly occurred to people like us, and certainly just sort of towards the end of the punk thing, that you might get a gig, you know, if you just asked. So we came here, and the governor, Aloysius, God rest his soul, said, "What's your act then, lads?" And we said, "Country." Just thought we might get a gig if we said country music. We very patently weren't a country band. But he sold a few pints that night, and we managed to get a residency here, which meant we played every Wednesday night for, I don't know, 6 months or so. It meant you learned how to play, you know, you were eyeball to eyeball with your audience. It's all very well writing songs in isolation. But when you see an audience reaction, then you start to learn what people like, what they don't like, and it gives you a direction, you know. And after about 3 or 4 months, we had a queue around the block outside. You know, record companies started to think, "Oh, this funny band from North London." So, you know, without this, we really wouldn't have made it, I'm sure. Yeah, one of my favourites was we'd read about a band called The Specials from Coventry, and they looked and sounded a bit like us. And they asked us if we'd like to support them at the Nashville, which was in Hammersmith, the Three Kings, which is another very famous sort of pub rock venue. But we'd already booked to play here that night, so we had to work out how to get to Hammersmith and back. So we made it across the Westway in our post office van, and we were beating him back here. And I remember our manager was having pints of beer thrown over him. We didn't get here till about 10:30. But then it went off like a packet of crackers. And in fact, that scene is in a movie we made called Take It or Leave It, which is, I think, the best indication, if you get a chance to see it, what it was really like in this pub when we used to play here. And it really was, you know, so anarchic to the point of collapse. You know, if it had gone up one more notch of adrenaline, the roof would have blown off the place. I remember, in fact, we got our first ever review here. I think it was Melody Maker, that music page. And the quote I remember was, "By the third encore, half the audience were standing on the table, waving their clenched fists, while the other half were reeling about the glass-strewn floor, jolly pissed." And that about sums it up. Yeah, very much, of course I do. Of course I think independent venues are important. You know, I mean, Henry, who runs this, is also the head of the pub association locally, and he went to meet whoever it was, Tessa Jowl, or the Minister of Culture at the time, to talk about how you can help music pubs, you know, independent music pubs. He was going, well, you know, and he said, well, look, behind you there's a gold disc Coldplay, you know, and you're getting all that lovely revenue and tax from all these bands. How do you think they started out, you know? And it's a bit like, I don't know what the analogy would be, but a bit like saying, you know, I've got an oak tree, but I don't want to plant any acorns, you know what I mean? You know, without this, none of it happens, you know. One of the greatest cultural exports this country ever produced, and probably is the only one left, is popular culture, and music being that, indeed. And does my manager make faces at me? That's just the way it is. It takes 20% of my money and makes faces at me. And, you know, it's very easy to overlook this, you know. We were saying that at the time, you know. If Margaret Thatcher had popped her head in here in 1979 when we were playing here, I'm sure she would have closed the whole place down immediately. But, you know, when you look at the other end of the, you know, rather vulgar financial spectrum, you know, it is totally why this industry is as successful as it is. My first cheque for PRS Music was probably for the band was probably about £100, and I think we probably all bought a pair of shoes. But, you know, the thing I always say, the obvious thing, is just to keep going, you know, and that's the hardest thing of all. You know, I know how hard it is, you know, especially if you don't feel like you're getting anywhere and your drummer's just left. You know, so many bands I know that just as they're about to give up, just some bit of luck happened and they made it. You know, it's very hard, you know, and I know you have to work during the day and rehearse at night, and it's getting harder and harder to get gigs, but just to keep going, basically. You know, live music is the lifeblood of all popular music, of course it is. You know, and it's great. I mean, I love grime and I love music made on computers and all that. For me, you know, ultimately seeing musicians playing together is, you know, to see them like that close in venues like this is a huge, you know, inspiration, you know, and you know, so many bands have been started because they've seen other bands, you know, sort of getting somewhere. So the whole thing is cyclical, you know, and playing live. You know, that is the very reason why Madness is still going, because we've got a chance in a pub like this to learn how to entertain a crowd, you know, and we are still getting booked because we know how to entertain a crowd. And that only comes about because we played in venues like this.